Yeah, look, I mean, when it comes to Meta, they own the distribution when it comes to social media. And, the three apps, their core Blue app, Instagram, and WhatsApp, all have north of 1 billion daily active users. So when you look at the time spent on the internet, Meta owns a good chunk of it, along with, YouTube and Google and all the other properties that Alphabet has. But what they have done very successfully in the case of Meta is apply AI across their apps. I mean, people talk about the ROI on Gen AI. Meta is one of the prime examples of how effectively they have added new tools to create ads using generative AI, to target ads using Gen AI. And that's why, all the infrastructure that they have invested in, the CapEx raise, is really translating into higher ad pricing and, better engagement on their platform.
Yeah, the overall stock market also owes Meta a thank you card because it's lifting the market right now, at least when it comes to the Mag 7. Take a look at this chart showing big tech market changes year to date. And you can see Meta, the obvious winner, Amazon coming in behind at a distant second. What does that tell you about the differentiating factors that are driving Meta's gains? You mentioned AI. Is that a story that you think is going to continue to allow Meta to outpace its Mag 7 peers?
Yeah, so I mean, the last, I would say, 12-month returns can be explained by the AI flywheel effect for Meta, as well as the year of efficiency that they started in 2023. And that really helped on the margin side. I think now the setup is slightly different in the sense that they've seen, most of the cost leverage, and now they're talking about raising the total expense guide for 2025. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have negative EPS growth, for the first two quarters. And so they're more relying on the top line sustaining at least mid to high teens and really controlling expense in the back half, which is not as favorable of a setup they had last year. But clearly, as long as they keep executing on the top line and, the AI flywheel is working, especially if WhatsApp takes off around search, and, they've talked about how Meta AI has over 600 to 700 million users. If that really can be monetized, I think that's where investors will be excited about paying a higher multiple for Meta.
Also want to talk to you about this report from the Financial Times indicating that ARM is developing a new chip and that Meta is one of its first customers. What does that tell you about not only Meta's AI ambitions that you've been talking about, but also some of the potential beneficiaries of Meta's success?
Yeah, look, I think in the case of Meta, they're talking about spending $60 to $65 billion in CapEx for this year. I would imagine with all these hyperscalers, they want to develop their own chips. Now, we know Google has TPU, Amazon has Trainium. So Microsoft is also developing their own chip. And in the case of Meta, they were somewhat reliant on NVIDIA throughout in terms of, building this GPU infrastructure. So I'm not surprised they're taking steps to develop their own chip. And over time, if you look, 3 to 5 years out, I mean, they would want to, have their own chips for the kind of consumption they have in their own data centers and the apps that they have to support.
What's going on in the chip sector, Mandeep? Because I can even see it crossing right now, ticker symbol AMAT down after their disappointing results. I feel like the sector has been under pressure. More broadly, obviously, NVIDIA struggling year to date. What's going on with chips?
Well, so I think that's where the geopolitical element is quite important because there is clearly a push towards U.S. manufacturing of chips from this administration. And if that were to happen, that kind of changes the supply chains for the way currently the chips are manufactured in Taiwan and, how they are assembled. And so from that perspective, I can see how it could disrupt some of the companies. And look, when these hyperscalers are talking about spending, the four hyperscalers are spending $350 billion in CapEx this year around data center build out. I wouldn't be surprised if they really ramp up their own efforts in terms of developing the chips in-house, which could have an impact on, some of the companies like NVIDIA and so on.